Hello everyone again. This is Tweety Gamer. I have been really enjoying doing this series, and it's really great to see you guys in the comment section and also with your likes and subscribes. I can't tell you, it's very ingratiating, and I'm looking forward to making new content for you as well. So, without further ado, here is part 3 of the Bloodborne kind of comprehensive off-the-hip analysis that I've been doing. Now, part 3, as you can see in the title, concerns the all-important aspect of immersion in games like Bloodborne. I touched on this in the first video by discussing a concept which I called the interactive nightmare, which there are very few things in waking life or otherwise more immersive and more gripping than an actual nightmare. And I don't know if there's even a word for it, but it really, if this is even a known field, but Miyazaki feels like, in the way that he makes his games, he feels like a scholar of nightmares, a scholar of engaging his players in the same way that a nightmare would, in the same way that an incredibly vivid and immersive dream would. And it's discussed broadly in reviews and such, which are more game and industry centric, but that's something that goes beyond. Again, that's what the theme of Tweety Gamer is. We talk about things here that go beyond just the superficial aspects and the framework of discussing games in those industry specific terms. That's much looser here on Tweety Gamer, and we discuss things in broader terms and more niche terms that go into psychology and behavior and stuff like that. So I basically have decided to go further along with this angle, because not only as a thing that I just want to create for myself, but something that I'm noticing that there are quite a few people out there who appreciate the channel. And I'm going to give a shout out to Trevor. I can't remember his last name, but he, in the comments section of the first video, pointed out that the soundtrack, the main theme of Bloodborne, is a very, very similar to the 1992 Dracula The Beginning soundtrack piece, so I want to credit him for that. And it adds another notch to the amount of references that Bloodborne is dropping. Again, stuff, that little trivia pieces that without this kind of community, of everyone sort of honing in on the same media, honing in on the same vibe of looking at these games and looking at games themselves, but here discussing Bloodborne on a deeper level, on a more intimate level, and having your eyes out and your ears out, ready and listening and wanting to point out and discover these little interesting tidbits. Now, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's definitely Tweety Gamer's cup of tea. So I'm very happy to know that there are people enjoying that and participating in that. So thank you, Trevor. Now, that was a sort of briefly touching on that first half of what this podcast will cover, which is immersion. The second half is going to be basically open speculation, sort of based off the latest buzz that's been happening around Bloodborne, and Hidetaka has even described himself feeling quite nervous about, a lot of news outlets and journalistic outlets essentially putting this responsibility on Bloodborne for being the savior of the PS4 and so. He just wants to make something that he himself would enjoy playing, and that he knows his staff and his friends would enjoy playing. And Yamigawa, I believe is the producer's name, just had an interview with, I want to say Game Informer, but that's probably wrong. I'll find the correct interview and put it in the description, and also annotate where I got it wrong, because I know I did. And Yamigawa basically said that, through a translator, he said that he is amazed that, or rather very pleased to know and to notice that his team, who developed the game over how many years and months, the ones who grumbled over every asset, who, designing every little thing and probably went insane in the process, if those guys are enjoying it to no end, and You know, it's something that they're able to access as a brand new experience that's immersive and enjoyable, and so his comment was, if that is how our team, who basically were sort of enslaved to the work environment, I'll post some photos on this video just to show you from Software's studios. I believe it was, yes, DualShockers. That's where these images come from, so credit to them for these. That environment, you know, apart from a few little flourishes where there's books and there are other kinds of, you know, inspiring objects, like, you know, there are some blunderbusses, I think, which I'll show as well. It's a pretty sort of basic kind of workplace. You wouldn't imagine all of these amazing titles to have come out of it, but that's literally what a games development studio looks like. It's a bunch of offices, it's a bunch of cubicles, and there's no different between all of them. And so it's always a little bit jarring to notice that no, this isn't some you know, wonderland of, like, you know, architectural wonder. It's an office, and these guys you know, work their magic through these machines, you know, and definitely can't under applaud them. That's not English, but definitely can't you know, downplay how important and how deserving of credit and congratulations that they deserve, this team. Absolutely. So basically, yeah, I'll be going into that. So discussions on the early buzz and what that implies for the future. So as we know, in this model of both game and the film industry and the series industry, when you hear producers always have their ear out for early buzz for their titles, and when that is starting to really take note, people are the word's starting to spread for these titles, and the anticipation, the hype and all that. A lot of the time, the decision to greenlight a sequel, the decision to give the team to sort of the nod and the go-ahead to start thinking about a sequel and a franchise, that tends to happen round about where we are now, so a week or so before release, you know, a week and a little bit. There's this magic window where the analytics are, you know, going like, they're just like hawks, just looking and analyzing, and so far it's been really good. We've had a lot of traffic with Bloodborne news, and the excitement and the anticipation is building, and so nothing could be better for this game in terms of where it's poised to be. IGN just ran an article about the history of From Software, and where it discusses essentially this games development studio, which you know, went from very, very humble beginnings to becoming this, what it's poised to become, as I think the IGN article refers to it as becoming games development royalty or something, and really stepping up from what it used to be, you know, From Software. So and I would like to, you know, phrase it in my own terms. I wouldn't go as, you know, I wouldn't phrase it so kind of bombastically or grandiosely, the whole idea that they're becoming some superstar developer. From Software have always just been these grounded, like, down-to-earth, honest-to-goodness games developers who just make, you know, very, very good games. Let's just put it that way, you know. So yeah, that's going to comprise the second section. So for the third and last time, without further ado, this is, yeah, our third Tweetycast together. So now, I was thinking of beginning on the subject of immersion. Last podcast I used the vignette of the cleric beast battle to sort of launch off of to describe some of the setting and some of the story speculation, but I'll use another vignette for immersion here, and I feel like I should divvy it up between the latest trailer, which is, I think I'll play some clips as I'm describing this, the trailer where the Doctor is describing Yharnam and being the blood administration, and sort of it being the town of blood administration, and now you need some Yharnam blood, that trailer there. I'll put a link to the description in that. So between that trailer, which has several shots which I want to elaborate on and give some commentary to, and also the latest released screenshots. Now, I might even start with those first. So, as you've been able to tell, and I'll have obviously a lot of these new screenshots running in the video. They won't obviously be as high resolution as the ones that have come in the previous videos, but nevertheless, it's worth putting them in a great slideshow where all of you guys can have a good look in case you haven't, and it's a good. That's also what Tweety Gamer aims to be, is sort of like a gazette. It gathers all the news, or a good section of it, as sort of curated by me and sort of put into these videos, so that you can kind of get these hour-long chunks. Not all the videos on Tweety Gamer will be hour-long, but so for these podcasts, though, for the Tweety Cast, they'll generally aim to be essentially hour-long. Sort of the idea is so that you're listening to it and you're essentially absorbing quite a lot of news in one package, and the media and the video that I play in the background sort of hopes to enhance that. And as you'll notice from this video, I've put a bit of music in the background. That's Alex Rowe, his Born in Blood album, which I'll put a link to the description in the description down below. A really masterful, independently made Bloodborne inspired soundtrack, which I think it ranks right up there with the soundtrack of MediEvil, which is to me the best video game soundtrack. And it's very hard to find the MP3s of it, and I've managed to rustle up some of them around the web. You can find on YouTube videos and such, but incredibly well made and well produced, and there's a lot of passion that's gone into it. I can see. I'm greatly looking forward to obviously the true sort of the game's actual soundtrack when that releases. I'm not sure if it's included in the Nightmare Edition, but I'm sure it'll pop up somewhere, and that'll be really good to both listen to and to I was thinking of featuring a few tracks here, but we'll see how that plays out with copyright and such. So, now, these screenshots, there are obviously, and this is sending a lot of people much, much higher on the hype scale, the weapons. There are some completely brand new weapons that there are a few that are even baffling people in comment sections. There's a very harpoon looking one, which I'll have up here while I'm talking about it here. The design is incredibly intriguing. It either looks like a harpoon or some kind of drill, some kind of gothic steampunk drill of some kind. Or it could just be a sword or something, and it's incredibly evocative, and it just that really speaks of what Bloodborne is doing from a design point of view, just from a design point of view, let alone the narrative. To create intrigue and to create, something just special and different, and kind of daring. Swords and sorcery are what they are, and they're, well-worn designs, and it's very hard to riff off the shape of a sword to an extent, and Bloodborne, by opening up into firearms and it seems like a lot of fashion as well, which I'll touch on soon. But by opening up into that for variety's sake and for immersion's sake, because part of immersion is to tailor your main character into how you, to some extent, would, I guess, in some sense, it's how you would dress. It's just customizing your character aids immersion. It's a pretty well-known fact. Apart from obviously going to the first-person route, but I'd argue that there are many third-person titles that are more immersive than some first-person ones. So, but we'll probably discuss that in a separate video. My favorite, I would have to say, of all the new designs for the trench coat, which I'm sure Bloodborne will reveal itself to be much, much more customizable than what has been revealed so far. It seems as though the main character design is generally just riffing off the sort of archetypical, iconic sort of trademark mascot of Bloodborne, which is the Hunter, that basic template, which I believe there are two variants of that are most common. One is the Hunter as shown in the Bloodborne poster, which is without the back cape and I think with slightly sort of tough, more form-fitting clothing. Then you also have the classic, which I believe is it's my favorite so far of the revealed designs as part of the marketing. It's the one with the back cape that absolutely, with the multiple collars and with the cape all the way up to the nose and the silver hair and that I feel is even better than the one as shown on the cover. So basically, yeah. And the thing that I find most intriguing about the way that the sort of fashion Borne thing has been happening, I'm actually finding it to be something that was very something that was quite unexpected, and I've seen it in the comments section actually. And one thing that I've noticed is when you are going through this kind of quite terrifying, quite nightmarish sort of game, and we're noticing these comments that are like, oh, I wonder what I'm going to wear in Yharnam. It's just a great juxtaposition. So yeah, I think I should give a shout out to that. And but anyway, that's something that we can explore a little bit more further down the line. So now, let me just make sure that I have all of my reference images, because now, as I mentioned in the first video, developing the structure of the podcast has sort of seen me determine some aspects that I haven't received much specific feedback about it, but just something that I've intuited. Is that with a few reference images, instead of entirely going off the cuff, it's good to have a little bit of structure. So I have a few images in front of me and just sort of arranging that now on my computer to make sure I can discuss the exact frames and sort of show them at the same time as me talking during the video. So you'll see the image as I'm discussing that precise image. In the previous videos there's just been a loop of footage, but in this one I'm gonna try and match up what I'm saying with what I'm showing a bit better. So one of the shots from the trailer from an immersion point of view, now this is a bit of a it's a bit of a, I'd probably say, I wouldn't say that it's, I haven't seen it that often in films, interestingly. I haven't seen that many horror films, but the kind of the time-honored and a little bit stereotypical, but nevertheless very, very effective baby's carriage, or baby's tram. I'm not sure what it's called. I'm having a bit of an English fail with trying to remember the word. Not a baby's trolley. I'll have to add an annotation for the word. Completely forgotten. But the crying and the wailing, and it's just sort of sitting there. What about that scenario doesn't sort of scream like, I must see what's in that, what's in the crib on wheels, or whatever it's called. It's a bit embarrassing that I forgot the word, but we press on. Yeah, I think that's a great example of the immersion of what Bloodborne is bringing in terms of these like mini set pieces of without sacrificing gameplay. I've seen so much gameplay-centric footage of Bloodborne. There's very few, in fact. The cutscenes, when they come, they do feel a little bit out of place, which is just basically a sign that it's sort of the yin to the Order 1886's yang, and I think that it's, for example, using the latest trailer, even though there are a bunch of cutscenes, and I mentioned it in the last video, part 2, with the carriage and the and sort of the underslung photo of, I posted some photos of it on the Tweety Gamer site because it was such an effective trailer. Some of those shots, and including what I find to be one of the most intriguing shots, which I'll discuss a little bit. There's a whole subject there with just how masterfully Bloodborne is doing its story, building that intrigue of the story, which anything that an aspect of a game or a narrative or a story that just makes you lean in and want to discover. Immersion isn't achieved just through good writing or atmosphere. It's achieved through set pieces and through tapping into what is a time-honored tradition for stories that just generate that feeling of wanting to lean in and learn more. And mystery has a lot to do with that. And I believe Hidetaka is kind of the king of video game building mystery, building that mystery in his games. Absolutely. So the shot of the baby's carriage is definitely effective. The dialogue that I heard from the blood administrator doctor was cryptic and intriguing and like very immersive in its way there. But then what was interesting about the trailer, I'm not sure if anyone noticed, but there was this interesting juxtaposition between the soundtrack and the sort of the shrieks and the moans and the fighting and the slicing, and then just in the background it was either the doctor who was continuing his monologue from the start, with the "we are born of the blood, unmade by the blood," that speech there, but the dialogue continued well into the trailer, and it's sort of to a kind of cryptic kind of whisper, which you literally couldn't hear. And I was wondering, could that have been, I'm sure it wasn't, but a part of me wondered, was this some kind of editing error on, the person who cut the trailer? What's the deal there, But again, it's those mumbled whispers. What horror movie, what successful and immersive and I guess Roman Polanski is a great example with his films. Those are definitely films that make you want to lean in, and Rosemary's Baby. There's a very well-known shot in that film, which I think it was my father once, he described to me the feeling of seeing it. I think he saw it in the cinemas when it released. There's a shot in the house where there's something quite sinister happening. I won't spoil it, but there's a shot where the camera is just leaning just to the right of a doorway, and it's almost unbearable because you yourself as the audience member, there's this lingering shot, I believe it may be of the child in the bed, and you can only see part of its crib visible. And my dad described the feeling of being in the cinema and just he looked back, he looked to his sides, he saw the whole cinema leaning as though they wanted to kind of crane over and just see what was happening in that crib, see what was happening to the baby. And I definitely sort of burned an image in my head and helped me with my that's why this anecdote is so effective when I'm talking about sort of the equivalent happening with games. I believe Bloodborne is doing it in spades, and that aspect is not nearly as extensively discussed as this kind of continuous, like, will it be the savior as PS4? Will it this? Will it that? Instead of just discussing its merits, as Tweety Gamer has been established to do, discussing its merits in a comprehensive way, where the aim is to actually generate a richer experience through informing yourself and through immersing yourself in what basically gave birth to the game itself. I mean, if we're talking about the influences all kind of converging from Hidetaka, from the rest of the staff, what isn't intriguing about where this came from and what Bloodborne represents? And it's just something that it feeds into why Tweety Gamer was created. Tweety Gamer is essentially a channeling of what I personally believe about games and the interactive medium, and I feel like there's a lot of merit that isn't being articulated nearly as much as these titles deserve. And but anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent, which I'll possibly include more of my thoughts along that line of thinking and that subject in a future video. Lots of future videos. But I'll head back into. There was another shot. There was a few shots that I found not just intriguing in and of themselves, but the tactic, the marketing rollout, the strategy of From and Sony with Bloodborne has been nothing short of just astounding. As we know, for a long stretch of time, the only sort of sights and sounds we got from the Bloodborne, development staff did sort of center around this one place in Yharnam, which was, it feels like, especially knowing From's older games, the Dark Souls and Demon Souls and the sequel, it's very, very likely that there will be, I think I saw a comment somewhere that said, we've been shown 12 to 15 enemy types, and From Software, especially just in and of themselves, but especially with their next gen title, they are going to go well into the hundreds of types of enemies, which doesn't surprise me at all. That this is how Bloodborne has developed intrigue and immersion in its marketing itself. Again, Roman Polanski making you lean in and pay attention. It's a lost art, and it's achieved through tapping into what we as humans naturally do when there's mystery. We're prompted into investigating. It's an old impulse, much older than anything. It's a primal impulse, and it's usually discussed in these terms. Definitely not in video game analysis. This is the terms that I'm discussing these things in is sort of the realm of psychology. But if you have a cross-pollination of interests like me between games and sociology and anthropology and that's what Tweety Game is about. And if that intrigues you, absolutely, you've definitely come to the right place. I'll just say this, it might be a bit jarring, but it was what I was going to build up to. That giant, festering, flaccid pig that appears out of nowhere, and you don't know why it's so oversized. This is what Gustav Doré did in his drawings, and I'll post a few here. Oh my god. This inexplicable gigantism of certain, creatures and shapes, and Gustav Doré did it with people's faces and the size of people's limbs. Like, there is just something, and you can even say that, like, things like Attack on Titan tap into it as well. But as soon as you just create, you take something known, this is what nightmares do as well. They take something that you've seen and that you experience on a day-to-day basis, like someone's hand, or someone's, like a human being or an animal, and there's just this uneasy, this kind of twisted warping that happens where either the object increases in size or it becomes warped. Like, I referenced to this in the previous video because the trailer had just come out and I'd only seen it so many times, but I've seen it a few more times now. And I apologize for my sniffle, by the way. I walked to work today and got a bit of a mini cold, so I apologize. There is one shot which, while I'm speaking, there'll be this shot in question. I don't blame you for wanting to kind of look away and just be like, no, thank you. The hunter in this one shot in the trailer is backing away from this. It's sort of quadrupedal. It looks like a woman in a sort of heavy dress, and she's got sort of extended arms, and there's nothing sort of particularly creepy about that in and of itself. But this woman is on all fours, sort of moving and like throwing her hands down one after the other, crawling towards you in sort of the Grudge style, and her head, this is as effective as it can be. Bloodborne covers everything from subtle horror to shrieks and sounds and creaking wood, to giant flaccid nightmare pigs that will eat your head off, like the pigs from, spoiler alert, Hannibal 2. That's, imagine a Hannibal 2, a Silence of the Lambs 2, which is the film Hannibal. Those pigs that level of just, nightmarish. That, pigs aren't classically nightmarish creatures associated with nightmares, but if you've seen an episode of Deadwood, I believe there's a character who uses, or there are characters who take corpses to be eaten by pigs, and it is true that pigs will eat anything, so there's a sinister side there. It's not immediately recallable. That's what, again, nightmares and Hidetaka do. They take things that you wouldn't initially place as scary, and then just give them a little twist. They do that. They also do classically terrifying things like lycanthropes and other sort of like demons and all that. They cover that too, but From also have this other spectrum to them, and it is remarkable that monster. There were just some extravagant, some terrifying, like rippling, flesh, flaccid, flapping everywhere, crazy, and yet the most effective monster that I still like. There are certain films and series and games that there's just a burning image. I can't get that image out of my head. That is only a trailer. That is only a few seconds, and I just see this, the hunter moving back, like stepping back. One thing that the Bloodborne character, the character model doesn't look. It's the detail is just so that you can, it doesn't reveal much. He's got his, his face covered, and I'm not sure what the facial animations will do. Like, we haven't seen many unmasked characters, although I believe the mask might be necessary because of the infection, and so then possibly all characters will need to wear masks. But anyway, the fact that, we can't see sort of any kind of terrified expression is because we're moving backwards and his sort of back is to the camera. And just that creature, that sort of snapped neck, crawling, approaching woman with that thump, those thumping hands just coming towards you. It's just genuinely spine-tingling. Like, that, of all of the scenes was in that trailer, was the most just... Because it was the most terrifying, because it was so unexplained. And, again, I suppose I'll give my final shout out to it, and I'll include another link in the description of this video, and I'd be very keen to hear what any of you thought of the PDF, but I'm referring to the Bloodborne, an interactive nightmare PDF, where I might make a separate video of just me describing Bloodborne, the interactive nightmare. It won't be definitely an hour long or anything, but I might just extract that from the PDF, because it is something I would like a few of you to hear, and to sort of have your thoughts on it. The idea that we could, at least in broad terms, ostensibly describe Bloodborne as essentially a nightmare simulator, really. It's got the obviously the gameplay mechanics that and the RPG mechanics, which do add a kind of sort of a technical side to it, and stats building and all that, which nightmares don't have. Nightmares defy that completely. And if we're looking for a straight-up nightmare simulator, we can look at things like PT, the Silent Hills teaser. That I would consider that a nightmare simulator as well. But with that being as short as it was, and as limited as it was, that is not how nightmares work. Nightmares can go in any direction, and Bloodborne is more indicative of that. There's going to be experiences in Bloodborne, which I'm quite certain with how effectively they've been in keeping their secrets from software. These just genuine surprises coming out almost once every day, and I know that we only have about a week left, and there's only so much they can reveal that's left to reveal, and each one just keeps building intrigue, keeps building immersion, causing people to immerse themselves into the world. And another testament I'll mention to Bloodborne's immersion is these videos. I believe that, considering 2D Gamer is just a sort of a nascent channel, that Bloodborne's the sort of the swelling of intrigue of Bloodborne. This is why I chose it to be my first series, because I myself am a part of that. I've lent my I've thrown myself in with that the intrigue, and that's why Tweety Gamer became an outlet for that and a place where people can share. At least this sphere, there's a lot of people simply single-mindedly intrigued about the gameplay, and also getting caught up in that marketing. Not that I'm saying it's a bad thing. It's like it is what certain titles need, and certain platforms, across history you've seen. We know that at the birth of a new platform, there is usually one game that the people are going around wanting to just hold one of those games' hands right up and say, this is our champion. And that's also happening to Bloodborne, which is the source of Hidetaka's. He's quite a tweety guy, quite an introverted guy, and he's probably not prepared for that. And he's confided in during the DualShockers article. You can see that he's just super nervous, and that is something he wasn't expecting, and he's just constantly saying that the main aim was to create a memorable and well put together game, and he's a notoriously humble and modest man. So I think in Tweety Gamer's personal opinion, of this channel, I can say on behalf of it that at least as far as I'm concerned, Bloodborne is that title. That's just my private, personal belief, and obviously we'll wait, and I don't want to jinx it, obviously, because it'll be judged on its merits, just as everything is in here on Tweety Gamer. I do have my passion titles, the ones that have, as I mentioned, I keep mentioning the Journey and the Order as great examples. A lot of reviewers gave one of them, quite high scores, Journey, and then the other, the Order, again, as I discussed in the first video, lower scores for the length and for the promise of what it was, and what it was is a 10 out of 10 experience for me. It's not something that's a subjective score, obviously, but I had been following the Order 1886 for almost longer than Bloodborne, and the initial idea was to debut the channel with the Order 1886 content, but Bloodborne has built up for me naturally after I played the Order 1886, and I've written some reviews for that, and those will be finding publication and content in videos in the future. But there's a taking into account what's happening right now and being current with where the sort of anticipation and the early buzz of Bloodborne is going. It's something that I found myself being responding to and wanting to discuss and explore, and there was that impetus that I've decided to follow in creating these videos. So we've sort of discussed so far in we've sort of jumped between them, the immersion and the franchise future. We've discussed mostly immersion so far. I'll flick back towards discussing the franchises. It did sort of dovetail into what I was talking about. We sort of landed on the note of early buzz and what IGN is saying and what Kotaku is saying, and what I believe it was either Forbes or Business Insider or something was saying that in 2015, Bloodborne, the savior of 2015 of PlayStation. For my part, I believe that Bloodborne absolutely, without a doubt, has a great potential as a franchise. Not something that is being discussed this early, but I'm happy to dedicate a fair bit to it here, because it's reflective and it's a testament to my my belief in the title and my belief in the team and the potential of the idea, and also as a credit to Hidetaka for developing it into what he did, and where it's come from inside him. Like, you can tell, using what Travis pointed out to me, the YouTube commenter I mentioned, I can either put a screenshot of what he said. I might do that in this video, so that you can see what he suggested. But you can see that even in the Bloodborne theme, one thing that it's almost to Hidetaka Miyazaki's fault to a fault, the man is modest. He doesn't he doesn't sort of draw attention to all these little nuggets that he does of, implants these references, and all the proof that this project is essentially a great passion project for him. That's being quite greatly understated for me. So, but you can tell that where Bloodborne has come from and I discussed this in the very first video about the whole thing beginning with the man himself. Hidetaka, with his ascendancy to becoming president and to gaining this reputation, and this creative license to develop more and more personal ideas. I mean, by going from Demon Souls to Dark Souls, and I believe unintentionally he just wanted, again, everything he's encountered in terms of success. He's definitely got his head screwed very firmly onto his shoulders and his feet on the ground. He's a very grounded guy. He simply made these titles to be great quality, have a lot of replayability and just something to be proud of. And by focusing on that, quite simply, all of his success, all of this talk about him being one of the most influential games developers, all that, he recognizes that is a side effect. It's just something that happens, as a pretty welcome, and it's a sort of a bonus that's happened, but that's just the nature of the man. And I believe he has a mind and a heart full of secrets and plans, and I think if a Bloodborne sequel were to come about, it would not go down the route of Dark Souls 2, which from our very they definitely listen to their supporters and to their community, because there are a number of things in Bloodborne which seem to have been changed, not like as an outright sort of reactively changing according to fan feedback. In fact, there are some things which they've completely just kept their integrity and they've done something completely different, and they're very unapologetic about it. But there are some things that have come back to Bloodborne that were left behind in Bloodborne 2, and it's definitely probably predominantly came from the developers' opinion of themselves and recognizing themselves that these issues needed to be fixed. But also, it's without a doubt From Software are in tune and they're receptive to their community. Bloodborne 2, which I don't think they may go down that route of simply calling it Bloodborne 2 with the two IIs, or maybe giving it a subtitle. I believe evocative subtitles like Scholar of the First Sin are amazing, and I think sequels should have subtitles instead of just two digits, or two I's to denote two, or three I's for three, etc. I think there's a great opportunity to create flavor and variety with adding a very evocative subtitle. And I guess you could use The Empire Strikes Back as an example. Initially, that was simply called. It was implied that it was Star Wars. In the early marketing Star Wars for The Empire Strikes Back, the Star Wars was simply a small little slither in the logo, and the title of the film itself was The Empire Strikes Back. And nomenclature, which is just sort of how things are named, is surprisingly determinative of the reception of a title. It's such a basic thing that I often get sort of strange looks for discussing in such an extended way. It's like, that's just a name. What's the big deal? Why are you talking about it so much? Well, names are incredibly important. What things are named is, whether we like it or not, we form judgments without even willing it. It's something unconscious that happens with people, with humans. We form judgments automatically, and it's not our fault. It's just how we're wired, and we can say what we want about how, I'm not a judgmental person or whatever, but judgments take place unconsciously against, without thinking about it. It's just what happens. And this is kind of an iffy example, but the Twilight films, when they went from Twilight to the Twilight Saga, etc., etc., that made it feel franchisey. It made it feel like, here's another entry, thanks for your money, here you go. And there is a hidden art to there's something that's very much worth exploring um, for content creators and media and film and everything, by just simply deciding to be bold and creating a different title for each one. And I believe Bloodborne will get a direct sequel, either set in the same time period or sometime after, but it will be a different title. There'll be possibly, somewhere little, just like with the Empire Strikes Back poster, there'll be a little reference to, possibly, it could be within the title, frankly, but the idea is that, for example, when we refer to Empire Strikes Back, we don't say Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. We simply say Empire Strikes Back, or sometimes we even just say Empire. Oh yeah, I remember Empire, So I think something quite similar. It's just a hunch that I have for where Bloodborne is heading, And now, in terms of the story itself, that's something where I can only talk very, 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 very limited what I can say about that, knowing almost zero of the story and certainly nothing certain, because I haven't played it yet, of of Bloodborne itself. But providing, this is very vague and very shaky, but providing the story is about your character navigating Yharnam, discovering its secrets, and coming to some big revelation, there may be something at the end of Bloodborne which literally implies that Bloodborne has changed, or the fabric of Yharnam has changed, based on your discoveries and the sort of chain of events that you cause to occur during the narrative. And this has happened in a few titles, I think. That direct sequels. There's a sort of iffy example again would be Devil May Cry. From the first to the second, it does follow just a traditional sequel. It takes place a few years later, I believe, and the state of the world is as a consequence of what happened in the first title. And just literally the earliest speculation, I might even be the only person speculating about, in a YouTube video at least, about Bloodborne's sequel. There's something that I feel, because of how amazingly sort of mind-blowing and revelatory the twists of Miyazaki's games, like in the Soul series. Something tells me that at the end of Bloodborne, something very big will happen. Either Yharnam will enter, a further stage of corruption and decrepitude, and possibly the gates of hell could burst open even further, or we could get an entire other city, which I think the Resident Evil titles did that. I think there was some Raccoon City based ones, and then there were other places, other locales where that happened. And it's still within the same universe, but allows for a different story to be told and allows for a different context. That would be intriguing as well, definitely, and there could be references made to the first title. But anyway, I definitely won't overstay my welcome with this subject, because I want to minimize the amount of people saying, what are you doing, speculating this early about a sequel. I'll just say it again, I'll reiterate that it is simply as a testament to how I feel the title is doing in this early buzz. It happens all the time with films, that when the early buzz is going well, a sequel is announced. I think that happened with Jurassic World recently. The film is still 3 months from release, and a couple of weeks ago the sequel was announced. It was confirmed. Several Marvel projects, that's what happens with those as well. So in my own sort of personal way, knock wood, that's what I feel as though is going to happen for Bloodborne. And I am already looking forward to the Hunter sort of entering that tradition of platform specific mascots. I think he has all the makings of a great mascot, and I can see the plushies already in my mind's eye. I can see the t-shirts, and again, when I talk about this merchandising, Star Wars, I guess, is a great example. The integrity of that story, the artistic integrity of that universe is never compromised despite the intense amount of marketing and the intense amount of merchandising. And we've seen a few early things. We've got the maquette, I believe that's coming. I really should know this, but I think it's coming in October. I'll find that reference and I will screen capture it, and I'll be able to share that with you in this kind of this video. As I mentioned, that's what Tweety Gamer videos are. They're sort of gazettes of compiled news and sort of relayed to you by, your friend Tweety Gamer. Basically, that's the idea. The maquette, and then we also have. I myself will definitely be getting a T-shirt. I think there's some. I would love the Cleric Beast T-shirt, which you see the producer wearing. I'm very envious of that one, and but I definitely don't go too far into the mass buying of things. Apart from what happened with the order, which I've since, as I mentioned in the first video, corrected. I've only got the 2 editions now, which is fine, but even when you'll see actually the upcoming content with Tweety Gamer. I'll be doing some live interviews in my room. I am not, you can't even tell from my room that I'm this immersed into interactive media at all. If you've been able to gather anything from these videos, it's something I'm intensely interested in, and yet it doesn't push me to the stage of needing to get all the posters and the statues and all that. It's about what the medium is doing creatively, and in terms of being just a worthwhile, innovative, engaging development in technology, entertainment, and storytelling, absolutely, and education as well, absolutely, especially with Project Morpheus. Yarnum in Morpheus, need I say more? I don't think it'll happen, but there you go, just an instant idea right there. So anyway, let's dial it back. So, as you can probably tell, the franchise prospect for Bloodborne, just based on the past minute or so, and that happened completely naturally. I just started openly getting excited and speculating about what could pave the way towards a sequel, and what's absolutely, without a shadow of doubt, sure to happen from the merchandising point of view. Bloodborne will get its share of figures. It will get its share of... I don't see anything like a lunchbox happening, although that could be pretty terrifying to have a Cleric Beast lunchbox that shrieks every time you open it. It's like, stay away from my sandwiches. I don't think that'll happen, but, anything in Japan. Hashtag anything in Japan, really. But there are good portents, there are good vibes with that, so I think that's, there are good omens is what I'm referring to there. So, now, just to dovetail, I've got a few more minutes to discuss the channel. Before I head on to that, I'll just say, look, this was part 3, the final part of the Bloodborne preview and analysis, as kind of channeled and funneled through me. I don't aim to be a comprehensive source. I'm not journalistic in my delivery. This is just, I'm that guy, that pal of yours who sort of investigates things and has these views about them and sort of is immersed into the interactive medium from this point of view. And hey, if you find this stuff intriguing, it's essentially what I'm thinking about, and researching and putting research together for naturally. That's something that happens to me naturally, or that I find myself doing, occupying myself with naturally. So that's what this content is. But anyway, that's basically the final part of this one. Now the next video series will be a 3-part series of The Witcher Wild Hunt, where I'll be discussing, in a similar fashion, what that title is doing with its universe, what's in store for it in the future, even though again it purports to be the last in the series. I think Andrzej Sapkowski's his universe, which predates Game of Thrones, by the way, it is the Slavic precursor to Game of Thrones, and the notion of a mature, sort of sex-filled and controversy-filled and grounded, mature, dark fantasy world. That's Andrzej Sapkowski was doing that before, with all respects to George R. R. Martin was doing that before. the publication date, at least, of Game of Thrones. And his that will be discussed openly. There's over at Tweety Gamer now. There is a kind of a sort of, I dumped the PDF for the content of those videos. To some extent, I just put that in a large post. A lot of the website issues with Tweety Gamer are going to be looked into, and some of the articles, the old ones that the content disappeared for them, I'll be managing those and making sure that people aren't clicking on articles and they're nothing coming up. So the idea is to have, by the end, I think in a few months' time, again, I'm sort of from a behavioral point of view and an energy, a social energy point of view, I have the sort of the energy level of a senior citizen. I might be 26 and have tattoos and everything, but I'm very deliberate, very kind of methodical in the way I do things, and I'm in no rush, absolutely, as you can tell with these long podcasts, and I really enjoy just sharing that very honest part of myself here, so that people can tune into that and resonate with that and make of it what they will. So I'm very grateful that there's been some response there, and absolutely, as you may. That's a Tweety Gamer thing, is just as you may, whatever you enjoy here. I'm glad that you do. Speaking of which, there won't just be these hour-long videos. There will be shorter videos that I will be reading from some of the material that I've written about several titles, including The Witcher and Bloodborne, and The Order 1886, which I'll be releasing some, not webcam, there'll be slightly better quality than the introductory video, which was just shot off my iPhone with the forward-facing camera, can you believe it? But there'll be a bit better quality there, just me discussing and reading, accompanied by some video, absolutely. Some of the writing that I've done, and I've referred to it here with the PDFs that I make, and I enjoy the art of sort of making these publications, these just for my personal use. It'll be something that I'll be doing with Metal Gear Solid. I can give you a few titles that will be getting the 3-part treatment, and please sound off in the comments below about what excites you and what you're looking forward to. It's just stuff, again, that is going to naturally, is showing signs really of being something that I'll be naturally doing. It's sort of just a forecast of what I'm going to be looking into, in the same way as these 3-part videos, and they are Final Fantasy 15, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, The Last Guardian, Abzu by That Game Company, That Game Company's next game, when that does come out, and definitely Silent Hills as well, and as discussed, The Witcher and The Order. So those are, definitely Battlefront as well. So those are a few that you can begin to look forward to getting the same treatment, and I'll be happy to hear from you about what your input, and as Trevor did with this one, if you have anything off the bat you want me to include, I'm happy to credit you in the video itself, and sort of make you part of this community. That's what Tweety Gamer aims to be, is to have that general feeling of, oh, someone else thinks this way as well. That's really great. Here's a place where I can hang out. That's exactly the place. So that Tweety Gamer aims to be, or exists to be, rather. Anyway, look, I've had one of the most sort of revealing experiences making these videos. I think I'm as well as the music that I've added to this, and the kind of gradual incremental increase in production quality that I'll be applying to the videos. It's something that I'm really looking forward to developing naturally with you guys and with your input, and the aim is for those featured channels that I have to communicate with them and have them involved, and especially Yongye and the Game Theorists, who are all very kindred to Tweety Gamer. And I also hope you've been enjoying my ending screen captures of these films. Just to give an explanation, they're great old films that I think kind of live in my soul. That's how sort of close to me they are, and a bit of an eclectic breed, is what I refer to both this channel and myself. It's something that I'm happy to celebrate with you all. I'd like you to do the same with me. Anyway, I've been Tweety Gamer, and thank you for coming to this video, and like, subscribe, and share as you may. Bye now.